In this video, we're going to talk about how we can steal the playbook of private equity, how we can take the good things that they're doing and apply it to our private practices. Let's get started. There's a lot of conversation about the negatives of private equity. It's watering down care for patients, creating unsustainable work environments for doctors and for medical staff. However, we believe that there's a way that we can take the good that private equity is doing and apply it to what we're doing, and we can create a sweet spot where we have a strong financial business, and we also are providing that great care and great work environment for our staff and our patients. Let's get started.
And I use this thing I call the 30-20-10 rule. So I want to make sure that when I'm analyzing the finances of a business, or I'm looking at their income statement, I want to make sure they have at least 30% gross profit, less than 20% SG&A or sales and general administration back office costs, and they better be making minimum of a dime on a dollar at the bottom. And if I kind of line up all of these different criteria, I can tell you that, here again, of those 33 million small businesses, only 7% get to $1 million in revenue. Only 4% of the 7% get to $10 million in revenue. If I completely want to stack the deck in my favor as an entrepreneur, these are the steps that I'm going to take when I'm analyzing a potential investment to make sure that the probability of my success is just exponentially higher. You can make money in any kind of company, but if you follow those simple rules as a new person just beginning, I guarantee you won't lose.
And so, as Adam Coffey explains, private equity has a playbook on how they approach the financials of a business. Number one, he talked about the 30%. We're going to go through the 30-20-10 rule in detail and explain how it applies to you and your private practice. So let's start with the 30 first. Coffey explains that you want to have a 30% gross profit margin. Let's walk through real quickly how you can calculate gross profit margin for your practice. So the first thing you need to do to calculate gross profit margin is you have to calculate gross profit. And gross profit is simply gross profit equals total revenue minus cost of goods sold. Now, what is total revenue? Total revenue is all of the money that comes into your practice. All of the co-pays, all of the insurance payments, all of the product sales, all of the money that comes into your practice. Cost of goods sold are material and parts and supplies, direct labor costs, so the cost of your staff, packaging and shipping costs, equipment operational costs, like if you have a laser, the consumables on using that laser, not the overall initial cost of the labor, but the laser, but the consumables on using that laser, processing fees and consumer purchases. So the amount that you pay Square or the amount that you pay whatever transaction company you use, and sales commissions. Any sales commissions you may pay for product sales. You calculate all of those, and that's the cost of goods sold. And then you subtract that from your total revenue, and you're going to get your gross profit. And then step two to find your gross profit margins is you take your gross profit and you divide it by your total revenue. And so let's just say, for example, that your gross profit was $100 and your total revenue was $1,000. $100 divided by $1,000 would be 0.1. And then you will multiply that by 100. It would show that your gross profit margins is 10%. Now, Adam Coffey says it must be 30%. So if your gross profit margins are not 30%, then you're tasked with figuring out how can I increase total revenue or how do I decrease my cost of goods sold? Okay, so that's rule number one. Next, he says you want to be less than 20% SG&A. Now, what is SG&A? So SG&A stands for selling, general, and administrative expenses. So selling expenses would include costs related to marketing, advertising, and sales activity. General expenses would include overhead costs such as rent, utilities, and insurance. And administrative expenses include salaries for executives and staff not directly involved in production, office supplies, and legal fees. So, for example, that would be salaries for something like your office manager, somebody who's not actually seeing or treating patients. That would be part of your administrative expense. He says that you want your SG&A to be no higher than 20%. So what if your SG&A is higher than 20%? Then you're going to have to figure out a way, how can you reduce your selling expense? How can you reduce, your general expenses? How can you reduce your administrative expenses and get those under 20%? And last, he talks about profit margins, net profit margins. He said net profit margins need to be at least 10%. And what is net profit margins? Well, net profit margins is net income equals your total revenue, all of the money coming in minus your total expenses, right? And so to get net profit margins, you would take that net income and then you would divide it by revenue and then you will multiply it by 100. That would be your net profit margin. Coffee says that number should be no less than 10%. You want it to be at least 10% or higher. As a private practice owner, as a private practice manager, if you can look at your private practice and see that it has a 30% gross profit margin or higher with no more than 20% expenses of SG&A, sales, general, and administrative expenses, and a 10% or higher net profit margin, you know for a fact that you have stolen private equity's playbook and your practice is rock solid financially. You know that you are on the right track. So let's not vilify private equity. Let's learn from them. Let's learn from their mistakes, the things that they do that we don't like, but let's also learn from what they're good at. And what they're good at is tracking the numbers and using the numbers to benefit the business. If we can use their playbook from the number standpoint, while maintaining that high patient care standard, while maintaining that high quality workplace environment standard, then we can have the best of both worlds. We're not setting ourselves up to be prey, to be purchased by private equity when we don't necessarily want to be. So I hope this video helps. I hope you apply some of the principles, and I would highly recommend digging deeper into some of the things that private equity does so you can apply it to your practice in a way that benefits and boosts your business, and that benefits and boosts the care that you can provide to your patients and the environment that you can create for your team.
What other specific topics related to the business of private practice management would you like for us to cover? Please share in the comments below or reach out to us on social media or our email address, thedermbiz@gmail.com. Our mission is to create a movement of collaboration and support amongst physician-owned private practice owners. If you would like to join that movement, again, don't forget to like, share, comment, and please don't forget to subscribe.